quite high, and I'm sure we will we will not be able to stick to the announced time schedule. But I'm sure we will manage to tackle all the important questions, and we will have, I'm sure, another opportunity to go back to our discussion after the session to exchange opinions. And without any further postponing, I would like to begin the work of our session and give the floor to our panelists. First of all, I'm going to introduce them. And you see that the panelists are experts in their own fields. I will follow my own list. They're not, the names are not in the alphabetical order. There's no logic. All speakers, all panelists are very important. Consultant on Irina Morozova, a consultant on brands and patents. And Irina, are you here? Yes, Irina, welcome. A business incubator, Ingrid Tech from Clara Oren from Israel. Director of Business Incubator from Israel, Nikolai Kolpakov, Director of the Engineering Center, Non-Commercial Enterprise, Leonid Grigoriev, an advisor to the Center of Analytics under the government of the Russian Federation, head of the Department of Economics, High School of Economics from Moscow. Deloitte company representative Nina Vanyushina, an advisor from a high-tech company, Nikolai Sokolov is here, Alexei Potapkin, an advisor to directorates, Moscow City University of Management, the government of Moscow, Kilmi Italian, IP Chain President Jakub Andrei Kluchevsky, head of GS Group Education Project Svetlana Kuzmitskaya, director of the sales department Citronics company Alexandra Shipachova, and she's here, I can see her, and Evgenia Konovalova, a co-founder and the organizer of an international R&D conference of artificial intellect, biochemistry. So I have introduced very briefly all panelists, and we will have a good opportunity to listen to their contributions on human capital. And when we speak about the evolution of human capital management, we have gained enough experience from different countries. There are different models produced in different countries. And of course, we have to rely on the previously gained experience, even though we have to admit that human capital management is far from being perfect. And there were some works on human capital management published during the Soviet Union times, from the Soviet times. So we have some background, theoretical background, and we also have publications on technological breakthroughs in human capital management. But before we start, before we go into detail, I would like to ask all panelists how we can use human capital as a macroeconomic resource, as a tool of management. And during the plenary session, one of the speakers said that we understand the prevailing tendencies in human capital management, human capital development, and these trends are being analyzed in the framework of various projects in science, in education, and so on. So human capital management is a key topic in intellectual property rights protection, in industry, especially when producing goods with high value added. And that's why there's a whole scope of issues pertaining to human capital management. And it's my pleasure and privilege to give the floor to our first speaker, Andrei Kluchevsky. So human capital as a macroeconomic resource. So how do you interpret this problem? How do you understand it? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. So it's a challenge for me to be the first panelist to start this discussion, and especially in the presence of this expert community who are very well aware of the depth and complexity of the problem. But nevertheless, I will try to do it. So first of all, we have to separate human resources and human capital. These are two different notions. So we know how to manage human resources. And human capital management lags behind. But the audience, people sitting in this room, we all are human capital. We would like to bridge together our position and the us panelists and the audience. And probably we did not manage to find enough motivation to bring human capital closer to us experts, panelists, meaning that people are sitting, taking not the front rows, but sitting in the back of the hall. But we have to understand who are people around us. Who are those people who constitute a nation? What do they want? What do they strive for? What competences they get during their lifetime? So all these questions and the answers to them are key to the understanding of the essence of processes that are going on in in modern societies. Just to give you a practical example of the unawareness of who are people around us. So in the hall, I can see Stas Namin. And we all know Stas Namin. He's a famous person. He's a frontman, the creator of the Tsvety band, flower band, music band. But probably you don't know that he is a talented, extremely talented painter. And he is also not only a musician, but he specializes in musicology. And he's a composer. And he also composes not only pop music, but also symphonic tunes and melodies for symphonic orchestras. And very few people are aware of all these facts. But in reality, a set of competences that Stas has is unique because he knows everything about culture. He knows music, he knows arts, painting. He knows he's a specialist in different kinds of music. And if I had to, for instance, if I had to go in depth in a certain issue, I would certainly ask Stas to help me because of his competences. And I'm sure that many of you were very much surprised when I told you all these facts about Stas. So it's just an example how important the knowledge on hidden competences of each person is today. And without this knowledge, without a deep understanding of the variety of competences, about the deep understanding of what human capital is, it's impossible to move forward, to go into the future. And of course, I would want to quote Mr. Baker on his works on human capital, where he analyzes the notion of human capital from the philosophical, mathematical point of view, historical point of view, because he reflects on the history of the United States, how they develop human capital in the States. But unfortunately, in his book, very few pages are devoted to what human capital means for creativity, for creative industries, how to create intellectual property. So the writer speaks about education, the way of life, standards of living, modeling and behavioral patterns. For instance, if members of one particular community swear a lot, this is a negative human capital. If they praise each other, this is a positive human capital. But creativity is, of course, an indispensable part of positive human capital, and it is particularly important for our country, since the state does a lot to develop human capital. And of course, my example of Stas Namin is a good example of it. And I think that the state does everything so that to minimize our inability to, for instance, work with big audiences of people, to motivate them to work with larger space. So I would want all of us to I would want all of us not to speak about plain truths that have been discussed by many people, but to try and reflect on the problem from a different perspective. We are in Russia now. We are in a Russian exclave in Kaliningrad. So that's my perspective on our discussion.
Yes, I agree, but yeah, probably we can have a kind of, well, just spontaneous discussion. But anyway, we can have some anchor points. For example, we can have a lot of information, but be unable to apply it correctly. Yeah, so we know what Evelina knows. We know who is with us from, well, just a person from a very good family. Well, just it's my information that I I owe, yeah, so, but I don't know how to apply it. Probably you are right, but probably we have to develop some strategy, how we proceed from, how we proceed from the general to some concrete points, and probably we have to develop some general federal strategy, how to, just help our companies to use the information. Then probably I can address Leonid Markovich, so who can be a representative of a federal point of view. So what is it for the Russian economy? What is it for the wider Russian economy? And how can we use the human capital? So just, of course, we understand that we can keep, we must keep creative people here. Yeah, just attract them to stay here. Yeah, attract them against going abroad. So how can we deal with the human capital? Well, just please don't expect me to speak for the government. I would speak for the creative people. Yeah, so just when we privatize too much, it's a kind of it's the enemy of creative people, of creative class. Yeah, so we have a lot of talented people. Yes, we can accept that we have got some problems, some issues with the comprehensive education, with the school education, and our national exam certainly is not a factor to support the creative approach in the education. Yeah, so I understand that people used to read more and people used to be more versatile in their education before the national exam was introduced. So when I see students who come to the universities, I see that they are the products of the national exam rather than the creativity at school, and that is hard to refuse. That's hard not to accept it. Then it means that creativity is killed or sometimes is hampered at the very beginning at school age. Then the second point is that we have to just we have to understand that if you want to support the creative potential in the country, we have to use it to apply it in a correct way. Yeah. So just people people cannot be made to report all the time. So people can be given some freedom, must be given some freedom. Yeah. So sometimes when people go abroad, they develop this creativity because they don't have to report to anyone. So then, but in economy, the situation is a little bit different. I can see a lot of my gifted students who come back. Why do they come back? So they first they immigrate or they go abroad, but then they come back. So there are several reasons why they come back. One of them is rather funny. A funny one. So just melancholics sit abroad, stay in many countries. Melancholics stay home, and sanguine people go somewhere. Yeah, well, they go travel. But in our country, it's absolutely different. In our country, well, the adventurous people who look for some challenges, so they first go abroad and then they come back. Yeah. Well, the feature of our society is, or the feature of the foreign society is that they cannot overcome some glass ceiling. They see that they cannot reach more, or they cannot get more that is within their abilities because of this glass ceiling. So, and then it means that they see it as the reason to come back to Russia, where they can be more creative and they can achieve a lot more. Yeah. So creativity is about individual work. It's about being alone with your thoughts. It's about being alone with the results of your own work. If we think about some other creative people, so just we can see that they are alone and they can, just create when they are on their own. For example, some people from the history. I can give a lot of examples when my own creative work was under pressure. One of the organizations was collecting papers which were devoted to innovative development, and so then they analyzed the texts. So my text was also first selected, but then it was thrown away, because I was kind of a little bit against the governmental policy on supporting creative activity. So I would like to share another story with you, just which just goes very much in line with what we have been discussing. So 50 years ago, I was in a meeting with some PhD students, but it was conducted in St. Tatiana Church, which belongs to Moscow State University. But the building used to be, something different. So it was a kind of meeting room for the university, and it was full of people. People it was overcrowded, and the people were hanging down from balconies, and there was a stage, and Vysotsky was standing at on the stage, and so just he was looking at people who were everywhere, and he couldn't say anything. That people, I cannot do anything. Just sit closer to me, please. Sit on the stage. Yeah. So what about the Soviet times? What about the this period, the 60s in the Soviet time? It was really very creative. What do you think of this? So Soviet time did not see the internet, and it did not use the internet as the major means of communication. Yeah, so then it means that our creativity could go any ways it liked. Yeah, so when I was in the 60s, when I was developing my creativities in 1979, I was sent to a business trip to the United States, and I saw, I saw great people who came from some Jewish families. When the Jewish families immigrated to the United States in the 1930s. So and he came from that cohort. So I came to the United States and I was to participate into an event. And I was in a kind of investment. I was a representation of the human capital, well, a part which was sent abroad, and I was given a sector. So I was given a sector with other opponents. And I was given a rater, which worked all day long, and I used this rater to inform our central party committee about everything that I saw in the United States, about everything, literally, like, the oil prices, the traffic jams, everything. And then my information was rechecked. But I was a real representation of the human capital, the person who was trusted, the person who was sent, the person who was given some task, and the person who had to report. So it means that, we also can see some, soft competences or hidden competences, which, many people are not aware of. So we all work very hard. So we all work, and we are very conscious in what we are doing, and we are giving our knowledge down to further generations. But it means that we grow the good generation. We grow talented people who are appointed to higher positions and who can work creatively and who can work independently. So just let them work. Stand aside and let them work. I also carry on being creative. So I write lots of works. I write fairy tales. So these fairy tales are not actually for children. They are not meant for children, but they are meant for, independent grown-up people who think creatively. And one of them is about two witches, who have a conversation about their life. And one of the witches says that a witch without society is just a bag of cheap tricks. And so that's what our life is about. So we have got a very representative of a business incubator from Israel, Clara Oren. And to me, Israel is a combination of creative cluster and combination of creativity of the people who decided to settle the country some time ago, but at the same time they have to comply with very strict rules and censorship. So it's a very good combination of the command approach and a creative approach. And when it comes to creative approach, if we think about high technologies, that's a symbiosis of these two things: freedom and creativity. Freedom and creativity, and some strict regulations. Probably you can tell us something about that. So of course I understand that we know something, but probably you will give us some new view on that. I'm Clara Oren, and I left the Soviet Union about 50 years ago. It was before Perestroika. And my first background is in mathematics. And for 19 years, I worked in aviation, in military aviation of Israel. And I even held the position of major. And then I decided to create a technological incubator. I started it in 1991, and I have been working there ever since. And I work with innovative technologies, and we grow startups. We have created more than 80 startups. And I would say that Israeli economy is based on human capital. We do not have any natural resources. Well, recently we have found some gas, and I hope that just it won't spoil us, it won't make us lazy. So our economy is based on, or the background to our economy is high-tech enterprises. I can share some figures for you to better understand how it works in Israel. I know that there are lots of rumors about Israel, but according to the latest census, we are 8 million people. But you cannot easily identify us on the map, on the geographical map, but we are 8 million people. Censorship, military censorship can be a challenge, but we actually don't have anything in common with it. Yeah, so I do not work for the military industry and military technologies, but I work with some high technologies which can bring you a lot of money. My presentation is about technological ideas and big business. Lots of years ago, we saw almost the same problem. I was going to speak about it, but you have already mentioned it. Well, many years ago, we witnessed some brain drain. Our people tended to leave Israel and go for the United States because the salaries, the wages were much higher, and the conditions were much higher. And we remember the rumors that Golda Meir tried to agree with the United States on some kind of ban for Israeli people to enter the United States. But, well, fortunately, nothing of that kind was true, and people who wanted to leave had all the chances to go. The only solution for that situation was to create the conditions which would favor people who were really creative and which would provide them with all the conditions to stay in their home country. We have quite a high standard of living. Israel, I don't know if you know about it, but Israel is third in rating in NASDAQ rating. Such a little country is third in NASDAQ. And we are 45th in we are third after the United States and Canada in patents. And every year, new Israeli companies get about $3 billion of foreign investment. And of course, it's a good sign. Israel is the only country in the world which welcomes big companies like Google, Microsoft, IBM, and they locate their R&D centers in Israel, which means that now these companies they hunt for our specialists, and they choose Israel for their R&D locations. So it means our experts can be employed in their home country. So the companies come to us to employ them. So human capital is the real background for our economy. So we have achieved a lot in that.
Я думаю, что
when I speak about some criteria for the project to be accepted to our business incubator, I would say that they are very simple. We check the technology, we study the market, we do the market research, and we look at personalities. So I'm always asked if I have a psychologist and staff. I answer, no, we don't have a psychologist, but we have a lot of experience. And why do you check personality? Why do you look at the personality? Yeah, of course, everybody understands when we think about technologies and the market. But, well, I explained that personality is really very important. It's the key element to transfer an idea into a successful company. So you have to have lots of skills, and you have to be able to work in a team. When you have your own idea, you must be able to transfer it to a company or to a team or to a company which invests a lot into your idea. So it means that you must be a personality who can attract people to develop your idea, and you must show that it's not your personal idea but the idea of a team, and then the idea of a company. That's really very difficult to do. And not everybody complies with these parameters. And sometimes, well, a perfect idea, brought by a improper or unsuitable person, unsuitable personality. So just this idea can be killed, not well, just on that stage. So it can be really killed by the wrong personality. So we can see the tremendous development of the companies. Last year, we sold the company for $20 million. So just we invested $20 million, and it was sold for $15 billion. Yeah, so you see the difference in figures. So, and we understand that if we accept the wrong personality now, then it will result in complete fail. So everything is based on the human capital, and it must be treated really well. It must be treated with good care. Every time when we conclude an agreement between our incubator and a person who develops a company, we identify lots of lots of rights for the incubators, or lots of possibilities for the incubator to levy the veto right. But I would say you that I have never used my veto right. Well, I would tell you why. So as soon as, or in case we are not unanimous about some decision, but we we use the this majority system in just as soon as we are not unanimous about some decision, the decision is not taken, because we must be unanimous. The majority does not always win. Yeah. So just because everything depends on a person. If the person does not understand, right, if we fail to explain the person that he is wrong for some development, and at the same time the majority makes the decision, then it's the wrong strategy. That's really the wrong strategy. So, yeah, you're absolutely right in focusing our attention on this kind of approach. And I would say that probably we are not ready yet for that. And we hear such discussions on different levels, on the level of common people at the grassroots and on the higher levels. And, of course, we must understand that everybody, every personality must experience some personalized attitude. But probably that would be interesting to speak about the macroeconomic resource, or about the human capital as a macroeconomic resource. When we speak about ordinary people, citizens, ordinary people in the city, in the country, who are not integrated into some industrial chains. So they are not the subjects of huge corporations or big business, but at the same time they represent, a reliable resource. We can take Moscow as an example. We always say that Moscow is a different country, and to some extent it is true, and we understand why there is such an opinion about Moscow, unfortunately. So I'm, as a Muscovite, is happy to hear that, but I think that, I think that Russia must see, a bigger number of such cities on its territory. So, but I would like to address Alexei Potapkin, the advisor to the Rectors Council at the Moscow University. So I would like to address him with this issue.
Distinguished colleagues, good afternoon. When I was preparing for the IPQuorum, I was selecting photographs, and I was thinking of human rights, or human property rights, intellectual property rights, when choosing photographs. So it took me more time to prepare my presentation than it usually does. So I'm going to speak about the environment. So we spoke a lot about people, about their system of values, their approaches to problem solving, and so on. But in my presentation, I would want to show you a couple of trends which are quite common for the corporate world and in urbanization and urban environment as well. So these are my sort of observations. So the first slide, those of you who are hungry may enjoy it. So everybody, we very often speak about offices of IT companies, flexible time schedule, sports facilities, some snacks, fruit. And very often people start laughing at IT companies, saying that they are just they're enjoying themselves. They're not really working. They're enjoying themselves. Enjoying foods and drinks, and for some time I was skeptical myself. But a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to an HR director of a work metallurgical company, and he said, not a Moscow company, and he said that good specialists don't come to our city because we don't have fashionable Vogue cafe or cafeterias. And then I started thinking about it. We have a new generation of specialists, and there are lots of memes about it. An interview with a millennial. And these experts belong to a new generation, and work environment, work media are of extreme importance to them. And when it comes to cities, then the same holds true about cities. Cities actually compete for residents because residents are human capital, and they compete nationally and they compete internationally. Countries compete for residents. And on the one hand, urban environment is a specific environment, attractive for people, because urban life is more comfortable from the point of view of education, medicine, and social attitudes, and so on. But urban environments facilitates the development of behavioral patterns of people. And this picture actually reminds us of the theory of broken windows that has existed since the 90s. So, which says the following thing: if one window is broken, soon all windows will be broken. If some place is littered, then all other places will be littered. So the structure of urban environment, the urban environment itself forms behavioral patterns of residents. For instance, if everything is clean and nicely organized, I don't think there will be any cases of vandalism in any city. any urban environments. This picture shows another city. This is Moscow, of course, before and after picture. Moscow 10 years ago and Moscow of today. And you can see how much Moscow has changed during these 10 years. This is another example from Moscow, from Gorky Park. Some years ago, people just went there to drink beer, and it was very difficult to, very scary to go there. But now people come to the Gorky Park for a different reason. And people use a different language, even in ads, a different language is used. Another example of shaping an urban environment, how to calm down traffic. So you see how lines, simple lines, or for instance, pavements, different types of pavements can calm or shape urban environment. 3 different types of tiles are used for paving the streets. And another trend that I wanted to mention in my presentation. So if you know that our needs grow, and we want to be involved in all this process. We want to participate in the management, urban management, and this is a growing trend. People want to be better involved in the work and life of any city. And this is a snapshot of one of the websites from Barcelona, and you see public participation, the participation of citizens in the life of Barcelona. And this is an example from Moscow. We have 3 websites, 3 portals where residents of Moscow can actually upload photographs of urban problems, and city authorities, the authorities of Moscow, react to everything that happens in urban environments. And now residents feel more responsibility for the city they live in. And they are very much involved in what is happening around them. Another example, Active Citizen. This portal is used for the discussion of very serious issues, for instance, traffic, the discussion of the traffic system of Moscow, and many other things. Another portal, crowdsourcing portal, and here you see that this is an example of digitalization of public participation. Digital democracy is becoming more and more spread in Russia. So earlier on in ancient Novgorod, there was a people's assembly where residents of Novgorod solved city problems. And in Moscow and in other cities, these digital platforms offer a very good opportunity for a better involvement of residents in the life of cities and in shaping city environment. I have a very brief question to you, Alexei. So this is the city talks to its residents. This is the name of the approach that you are telling us about. But has it ever happened when, for instance, residents objected to a decision made by city authorities? When residents say, well, we don't like it, we object to your decision, and how do city authorities react? I hope you understand what I mean. Yes. So when such instruments, such platforms are introduced, we just have to be honest with ourselves, honest with our residents, and if you ask them a question and residents express their will, for instance, paid parking, and it's clear what the response will be. And if you are honest with yourself and with people, then you have to stick to the results of the vote. And Muscovites voted against paid parkings, and the authorities had to take it, had to accept it. And if you posed a question complain about, then you have to understand the consequences of your action. You have to be ready to react and accept both positive and negative responses from residents. Yes, we discussed it. We discussed it with Alexei before our panel session, and I'm a Muscovite myself. And in the Moscow region, they have a similar internet system, but it doesn't work as efficiently as in the city of Moscow. But I know that if I complain, if I send my complaint to an internet portal, I know that very soon, within 24 hours, the subject of my complaint will be paid attention to. And when we speak about businesses, there are a lot of creative ideas. There are a lot of creative ideas that can be united or combined for the benefit of people living in the city, because very often businesses, just like people, they are completely unaware who exists in the same business environment with them. And we have to be able to work with both businesses, companies, and people working there. And this is a separate task faced by us. Very often we hear about different organizations, different foundations, and we don't understand what these organizations specialize, what they specialize in. And I meet all people who are involved in this or that type of activity, and we don't understand what these people are doing, and that means that we are unaware of them and they are unaware of what we are striving for. And I would like to give the floor to another panelist, Mr. Kolpakov, who represents national engineering centers. And engineering centers is a positive example of this cooperation between people and businesses, and between businesses and businesses. So how do you work with businesses and people from the point of view of human capital?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues and the participants of the conference. So, well, we have to keep the time, please. Yes, I would like to be. I try to be very brief. So I will say a few words about the organizations that I represent here, and how we relate to the idea of human capital, and how the technological possibilities and innovation possibilities depend on human capital. So we live in a real world, and we understand that just we have to keep in in the standards of the reality. So, and our tasks, the task of our center is to bring some standards to the operational chains between the customers and between the different executive companies which exist in the market. Yeah? Just how to organize the internal processes in the company which are not seen from afar. And how to, just to organize the cooperation between some major consumers, major contractors, and the companies who can do the work. So the total budget is about 5.3 trillion rubles a year. And so just this, and the budget is basically formed by the, marketing the projects which are produced, beyond the borders of the Russian Federation. So that tells us a lot about the human capital. So it means that the production within the company, within the country, is not very much in demand. So the reasons for that could be different, like when there is no system, or there are some other reasons which are not very typical for Israel, for example. Then, I understand how to organize it, but yeah, there are, our our partners are the companies which you can see here, the major companies like Russian railroads and Nornickel and some other companies. So they are kind of major representatives, and the major principle or the major principle or just the major area of our work is the military and industrial complexes and gas and fuel complexes. So, I won't dwell on on different areas of our work, but I would like to draw your attention to this slide. So, and I will try to give the idea of how we work with the companies. When we identify the need, the customer's need, we understand that sometimes it is difficult to find the contractor within the country. So we have to set up a consortium of several contractors, of several executives, which will work here in Russia and abroad, and mainly they produce the whole production cycle, or they give the whole production cycle when they use the raw materials, when they use the just the startup point, and then they produce the whole cycle here. Then just this type of work is just does not presuppose any competition. And it's not about any market development. Because if you are a kind of a monopolist, so just it means that you can use your own strategy in how to develop it. But you cannot be systematic. And our task is to select some particular tasks and develop a operational chain of actions, which involve the company with which involves the company contractor, the company with the intermediary business solutions, and the organization which must participate in this technological chain and be accepted by the customer. So where does the finance come from? You probably have noticed some of our co-founders. So you have got you have seen a couple of funds of the innovation support, and then the next question is about the trust within the company. So then it means that we have to reshift the vertical line of communication into the horizontal line of communication, and then it means that we organize our cooperation on some different principles, like the strategic futures or the different types of agreement between our contractors. And just it gives us the chance to attract financing and investment, sometimes in investment as technologies from other parties and sometimes from other countries. Then the consumers see the just the order, the commission, a little bit different. They evaluate it from the point of view as from the user point of view. So they. That's why I sometimes see Incubator as a very promising organization, promising institution for the companies, which must be grown separately from the just from some real world, so which can keep their creative potential and which can develop their creative potential. And then if you focus only on upgrading and advancing of your major tasks, then it means that you lose focus on some smaller tasks. But our task is just to make it more horizontal. Then another part, or just another task, is to develop the market spectrum and to develop the market choice, because one company cannot fulfill all the tasks which are set for the company, even if it is a major one in some particular area of industry. So because just well, you need a larger market to attract more finances. And our task is to bring together several corporations and make this chains so that they would be economically feasible. And then it means that we come to the same situation. So these are just two different strategies how to, well, just develop the company and how to develop the human capital. Yeah, so whether you make it horizontal, yeah, so just when people see the real reward and just the real benefit from their own effort, so they are rewarded with some money or with some compensation or with some links, or the second situation, the different situation, when there are some prerequisites for replacing some technological solution with a more advanced one. So I won't go very much into detail because there are some separate particular examples about Gazprom or Nordnickel or, well, some other things, some other projects which we are implementing now. But I would say that all these strategies and processes, well, focus on the quality of human capital and the possibilities or opportunities for people to communicate within the technological lines, within the, well, just this kind of strategic development. Technologically, it can be rather difficult when we speak about some particular industries or some particular productions areas. But when it comes to human capital, we have to understand where the priorities are. So I try to be brief. So thank you. I understand what you are about. And Nikolai Kolpakov, who represents the Innovative Engineering Center. And that's a good example of a person who brings together business and people. And just it means that we have to proceed to some kind of service cases. And we talked about it already. And we talked about how to accompany business in its development. And that aspect, that attitude is in very high demand. And I know, well, just we have got, well, another member of our panel discussion is a company, Brands and Patents. And we have got Ms. Morozova, who represents this company here. And it's about many issues like the development of patents or just the registering of patents and the intellectual property rights protection. So just can you comment on how you work and which work you accompany?
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here. So I don't want... So I want to present my company, the company that provides services to businesses, and I would like to share my impressions of the companies we work with in the context of human capital management, and in a variety of its forms and trends. And I would like to pay more attention to some technical creativity and speak about all those people who work at factories and plants which historically are important to Russia, and I hope that these enterprises will remain significant in the world and national economy. So I have had some experience in the creation of systems of intellectual property management. I was the one who offered this kind of service to businesses, and I was happy and lucky that my idea was implemented in one of the biggest oil and gas corporations. And since then, I have gained enough experience that I'm ready to share with other companies. And when I go to a business, I analyze the situation and try to model processes and procedures typical of this company, and try to discuss optimal solutions with the management, senior management of the company, and with people. And my experience shows that very often bottlenecks in intellectual property management are related to are related to paying decent salaries or dividends to inventors and creators. And here we have two options. Either we follow the legislation and work in the framework of the existing norms that have been there since the Soviet times, or we have a broader outlook on their financial rewarding. For instance, from the point of view of Law 512, that says that if the enterprise and a person disagree on their financial reward, for technical inventions, 30% of the salary award. And very often in construction or in engineering bureaus, they use only this particular provision of this particular legislation. They don't look at the significance, they don't analyze the significance of this or that invention or creative proposals. And this is an example of bad management of human capital. And if senior management of this enterprise sees how creative engineers are, and if they understand fully well the consequences of the implementation, for instance, of their invention, if they assess the economic effect and the economic positioning of the company on the market, then the attitude towards these inventors, these engineers, is quite different. And I'm sure that the senior management of the company can go beyond the existing norms, beyond the rigid norms, and focus on the elaboration of their own internal ways of financial stimulation, financial rewarding of the engineers. And we can think of a whole system of financial stimuli, and we can have a whole hierarchy of inventions and pay our people according to the significance economic effect of their proposals. And another issue that I would want to focus on, and our employers, they always step on the same rake. So our lawmakers are considered to be experts in the protection of intellectual property rights, and they very often use legislation for their own benefits, and very often people, engineers, they submit same patents over and over again and cannot get this patent. So we have to strike a reasonable balance between the initiatives coming from our human capital and the existing legislation. So the senior management, lawmakers have to cooperate with those who with those people who apply for patents. And we know that there are many court cases when inventors actually take their matters to court because they cannot get financial rewards or they cannot get a patent. So we have to work on a system of cooperation between the employer, lawmakers, and employees, inventors or creators. So I'm sure we can all speak a common language. I don't think we should aggravate these difficulties and take the matter to court, because in court you never know who wins and who loses. And my major message is that we have to look at human capital management from a broader perspective, especially when it comes down to industry or industries. And take into account not only the legal framework, not only the existing laws, norms and regulations. Of course, legislation helps us to avoid unnecessary risks, but legislation, unfortunately, does not stimulate creative growth, the growth of creativity, and we should ensure that this is a very good idea. And we spoke briefly and discussed it with my colleagues before the panel, and Anna during the plenary session, and spoke about it, and we continue discussing it with Artemi. And of course, there are various means how we can motivate an employee, and we have to be flexible. We have to find an individual approach to each employee. But our employers, they are not limited by anything. They can focus on the elaboration of their own system of financial rewards and use it for the benefit of the enterprise, and probably not only businesses, not only employers, but also the state should pay more attention. Do you think the state should regulate creativity one way or another? Are there any criteria similar to the ones that we used to have in the Soviet Union? For instance, if an employer brings an invention that reduces production costs, this is a good criteria for being financially rewarded. And Leonid Markovich, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this norm worked till the 1960s. But then this approach stopped working because the whole pyramid was turned upside down, and bonuses were paid to almost everybody, working efficiently, even without any inventions or any creative proposals. And financial bonuses were started being paid to, say, senior management of companies. So the whole system of financial stimuli was transformed. So, I am against over-regulation of creativity. So if there is a need to create, then it should be stimulated, and employers have to invest their effort into the stimulation of creativity. And I understand that the situation differs from industry to industry, from one enterprise to another, and a set of criteria for paying bonuses or financial rewards vary depending on the enterprise or industries. And I'm just thinking about some examples of successful industrial enterprises. But I know that in many of them, in most successful enterprises, they have a system of financial rewards for inventors and for organizers, for managers, because managerial team and the team of inventors, they work together for the benefit on the enterprise. And very often we have a very naive point of view on patents or patenting, especially when we speak about employers or the owners of the enterprises. Why do we need patents? When we create some technical solution and introduce it in practice, then we either reduce production costs or we reduce production time, or we use less resources, and this is an obvious benefit. Then we don't really need to patent it. We need a patent in order to get a competitive advantage, to have an exclusive right to use, say, a technology or technological tool. And it's very difficult to assess the efficiency of such a proposal in figures. In pharmaceutical companies, it's easy to do because we sort of project the capacity of the market when a new drug or a new medicine starts being manufactured. But in many industries, we have to apply for patents. Yes, of course, we have to apply for patent. But we should understand what kind of inventions or proposals are to be patented, and we have to understand the the economic consequences of patenting. And business owners or employers, they realize all these issues very often very late. They very often pay more attention to sort of rationalizing their production instead of stimulating creativity and inventions. So I remember there was a time when the state wanted to draw a horizontal line in your dilemma. So the state or the nation is very much interested in creativity, in creative proposals, in creative ideas. And the existence of a large number of managers, organizers, or excessive and very rigid norms and regulations, all these issues and all these people, they do not stimulate creativity, because creators, they don't need all these additional bodies and actors and additional norms, because all this over-regulation, all these endless inspections, they hamper the development of creativity. So one of my courses that I give in High School of Economics is on mafia and corruption. And of course, I don't issue certificates after completion of this course. But I discuss with my students a very simple issue. What can be worse than bribery? So what can be really worse? There are countries where bribes have always existed. And this is not our theory. This is an American liberal theory proposed by American liberals. So there is we in some cases we are very close to a situation when managerial costs are much higher than organizational costs. And we can see it in a number of industries and a number of Russian regions. We know numerous cases when a very potential business has to, or companies have to close down because of very high managerial or organizational expenses. So when we speak about the states, we have to take into account the ultimate aim, creating the benefit for people. This is a very interesting topic, and I'm very grateful that in our country, the rigidity of laws is compensated by a very slow speed of their implementation.
I know one very good minister whose staff is not completed yet because the salaries are so low that nobody is attracted to go there, and because he understands that, probably he must do everything legally, and he will keep his position instead of being thrown away or instead of being imprisoned for some bribery or something else. Yeah, so we know some examples in the Russian economy when some companies with rather good management are much more efficient than the representatives of private sector in the same industrial or in the same economic area. So just it doesn't matter where it belongs, but it matters who manages the company, right? But when we come to the motivation and the degrees and kinds of motivation, I would like to ask Artemy Ivanushin, the lawyer from Deloitte company, so that he can speak about the forms of motivation or remuneration, or just how it works. Probably something has already been mentioned. Thank you, Irina, and I really agree with everything that has been said. But I will share some of my observations. So the law on some inventions is very simple. If everything is filed correctly, then the rights on intellectual property belong to the employer, but the employer must pay the remuneration to the employee. So it's very simple to observe and to follow the law. So, but you have to understand how to motivate the worker, how to motivate the employer. So it means what kind of remuneration he can get. And so what is the agreement with the employer? And it's, well, sometimes it can be really curious to understand how it is implemented in the practical way. Because you can analyze how the strategy is developed in different companies. The companies differ really very much drastically. Well, no matter how simple the law is, it's really it's really easy to to comply with. Some companies simply ignore it. And so they they ignore all the regulations. Probably because the companies do not know anything about the assets that their employees create, and then the employees do not understand their added value. So when the company ignores what you do, of course, it devaluates the labor. And as it was mentioned by one of our customers, just the employees understand that they are not the resource. They are the actors and they are the creators. Yeah, so even if it doesn't come to the some musical piece, it can be about some drafts and it can be about some engineering results. But anyway, so any product has its own inventor who must be valued. Yeah, so then, the attitude of the company also can surprise us a lot. One of the companies from SMG sector also generates patents, a big amount of patents, and the inventors, just the inventors or the authors of the patents, the owners of the patents, are somehow the owners of the company. Yeah, so it means that they are so much creative, they are so creative that they generate all the inventions. Is it true, or are they so, or does it mean that they just steal the patents from their own employees? So then the third option is the remuneration, when it is paid to the employees, and it goes in line with the law, with the legislation. Yeah, so it also has got some options, or just it can take some ways. For example, some fixed amount that is paid to the employees. Yeah, so and then, of course, we have, we can see that the law is complied with, but how much is it, does it motivate people? Just this kind of fixed amount, how much does it motivate? Then the second thing is, we can see that it won't probably work. It's unlikely to work, yeah, because just the company observes the company fulfills the minimal requirements, but it does not motivate people very much. Yeah, so. Employees are not very happy, are not always happy, but when we ask them what motivates them, they mention fame, acknowledgement, and just that also can be the motivation, and it means that the company can the company has to find the strategy how to find the talents, how to identify the talents, how to commercialize on the inventions. So then the company can just delegate these responsibilities to the creators, to the inventors themselves. But that's rather a tricky solution. And because then the company must understand how it cooperates with the inventors and how much, or just how much it can motivate the inventors doing it this way. Yeah, so I agree with you. And just we have been talking about some service businesses which accompany the inventors and which the company the creative activity. Just in the which can work really well with some human capital. But again, the issue is how to develop the right strategy, which can enable us to make this human capital known and known to other people. And I would like to address Cal Mitali, just who can tell us how we can make it possible, just what is important for that. I think it's a little, there is some misunderstanding here. We are the agency which markets the territories in the Russian Federation, or which studies the marketing in the regions of the Russian Federation. And that was a kind of necessity, or this, choice was, can be explained that by some kind of necessity that we felt some time ago. Because in technology marketing, there are not so many companies which company or just which work with the territories. In our view, so how we can develop the territory, or how we can market the territory? We can develop the brand of the territory and work with the human capital. Yeah, so if we think about the Russian regions, so they are huge, and that's a huge mass of, resources, information, human capital, and so on. So we, we identify the approach, which we call the local patriotism. And I think that it is very suitable, just that's the proper term which reflects what we do. Because, actually what we do, we talk to people, we understand how people associate themselves with the territory. And then it means that they understand their value, their added value to the human capital for some particular region. We work with the agency Patent FM, and so just it works with the Moscow region. And while when you work with it, you must understand the full, or just you must understand fully the background for such a work. So we develop the standard procedures for the Moscow region. We develop the technologies which deal with macroeconomics of human capital. These are different strategic projects for Moscow and the Moscow region, like Moscow is smart city, like bicycle routes for Moscow, and so on. We have been working for 8 years, and I have understood some particular things. We have been discussing the issues of urban development, the technological development. But in our segment, we have full understanding of the fact that we have to proceed from people, and we have to understand what people want. And considering that, we have become the first agency which decided to study human resource, in kind of big numbers. Just we work with bigger companies. We work with big public companies. We talk to them, and we try to identify their motivation, and we try to make them understand what people around them need, what people who live in the city need. And we try to identify the idea which can attract people in some particular area, in some particular district or neighborhood. And then this idea will penetrate all the components which make up the territory. So it's architecture, marketing, which can attract some other companies from aside, the companies which would be happy to see their own presence in the territory, so that everything will helps people understand why they live in this particular district or neighborhood. And that's what I want to say. And I have brought, one of the examples, one of the cases which can visualize what I say. That's one of our recent projects. That's Khimki district, that's Firsanovka Street, or neighborhood Firsanovka in Moscow. And so we have got several projects in Lyubertsy, in Lipetsk, and some smaller local projects like this one, Firsanovka. And we identified that there is some territory, some land, and we have to work with the human capital, and we also understand that there is some concept idea. So, and the concept idea must be visible everywhere, in zoning, in mapping, in architecture, in how people are distributed around the territory, in the zones where they spend their time, and in the routes which they take when they go shopping. So, such type of understanding helps us, just to develop the territory, to develop local territory. So that's the case, and that's what Khimki looks like. And just you see that we proceeded from some general ideas, general assumptions, to some concrete cases. The idea which we found in this particular area, and it was implemented within the whole district. But we understood that that people who live in Kirsanovka, are eager to leave the territory. We understood that people who, just the residents are elderly people, and probably they are not ready to sell their property and to, just to go away. So we have come to some creative concept idea, which defined the territory, this neighborhood, as the neighborhood of some suburban residence area. Yeah. So and we got the feedback, and we got this response from people. Just this idea was accepted with a number of accompanying ideas. So we try to understand what people want from this area. So, and this idea can also stimulate some smaller local production, some local enterprises. So just some, people's creativity, and this more general idea, creative concept idea, comes and influences some macroeconomic solutions. Yeah. It means that when it comes to motivation, or if you understand the motivation properly, you can work with human capital. Yeah, just what is human capital? That's human life. How people what people do just in their human life, they don't fritter it away, but they just spend it on something creative, and our project resulted in more stable population, stable residents in this district. So fewer people decided to leave or just showed any desire to leave. One member of our team decided to buy property in that district, in that community, because he wanted his mom, elderly mom, to live there and to sell her homemade jam there in the local market. So that's just a very good human story. Yeah, so I agree that it's really very important. And I think that, again, it's about some regional administration. When regional administration shows the willingness to participate in such development and it becomes an active member or actor in such a development, yeah, thank you for the remark, because, I just mentioned that, but we started with lots of discussions with local population when we tried to explain why we needed it. And we have been working 8 years. We have been explaining for 8 years why this idea can be attractive for representatives of all the levels, and that the idea is a key factor in understanding human capital. And it means that we must be active on all the levels, the level of administration, local governance, and ordinary people. Yeah, because all these things combine the intellectual efforts and some resource efforts. So I would like to give the floor to the organizer of R&D conference in biochemistry, Mr. Konovalov. I would ask just why is it important? Or Ms. Konovalova, why is it important? Why do you get so much involved into that? Why do you spend time on such projects? Why do we need them? And probably that will give us the answer about the importance of human capital.
Yeah, thank you for your question. So first of all, I'm a researcher. I have a PhD degree in science, and at one point I realized that the science is underestimated in Russia, and at that point I participated in the project aimed at producing stem cells and later editing its neurons. And we got a grant. It was a big grant, I thought so, 6 million Russian rubles, and it was enough only to conduct 3 experiments. And in the Caroline Institute, similar project required 30 experiments. So we could write only 1 article and submit it to a peer-reviewed journal. So we understood that there is a need for a different level of funding. And I felt very much hurt, and I wanted to start companies and work with people who could come up with research, scientific breakthroughs, and then commercialize it. And I myself am a neurobiologist, and I applied a standard hackathon tool. And this tool has been used for 7 years in Russia, and it's a kind of competition, and I will explain what it is. So we invite people or teams of people, specialists in a team, and during 48 hours they produce a prototype solution, and at the end of this competition they present this prototype, and then they got a financial reward. And in HR industry, this tool is very often used when during 48 hours a team of people or separate people offered a prototype solution. And HR specialists use it a lot to test people, to see how good they are at what they're doing, how good they are at public speaking, at explaining the essence of their idea. how resilient they are to stress. Because this is a very stressful exercise, a very stressful competition when people are very pressed for time and they had to spend day and nights working on their ideas. So stress is a difficult thing. This hackathon is a very modern technology of generating and promoting ideas. But how many of these ideas actually have been commercialized, or are they usually commercialized or not? So in Russia, it's done fairly well because companies employ this tool, and usually they invite not separate people but a team of experts. And it's important because when we work together, when we work in a group, our cumulative potential is much higher, especially when it comes down to, say, a team of computer programmers. And I would like to ask the audience, have you ever visited the Super Jobs Headhunter? Please raise your hands, those of you who know these sites. Yes, these are very famous websites. How many sites are there where teams look for a job? When I was on my way here from the airport, I learned about one company, Kitcoin, specializing in assessing the creative potential of teams of people. And there will be a seminar within the framework of this IPQuorum on the 12th of April. And I want to share my experience of attending a conference and video conference. This is one of the most dynamically growing companies, at least last year. And I learned about their corporate culture when I participated in the conference. So the head of the company wakes up at 5 o'clock, and he works during 3 hours. 3 hours is his personal time. And he says that if I start working after 8 in the morning, I'm doing somebody else's job. 9 o'clock he's in the office, and he doesn't have an office really. He works in a negotiation room, and whoever wants to come and talk to him. And I know that people in this company, they virtually live there. They live there, they meet, they get married, and they bring their children to their companies. And this is a very good example how a business owner sets an example. And then he was asked at the conference, where does he invest? He invests into creative industries. And so very often we ask, what will happen when robots substitute employees? And this question is one of the popular ones when we discuss the development of robotics and the development of AI. We know that we are at the very beginning of this long route, and of course we understand that there are some routine processes, and as soon as robots substitute us when we perform in performing routine tasks, then we will have probably more time for creative activities. And in 5 years, I am sure that in 5 years, to this or that extent, robots will be performing some simple tasks. And robots can even perform routine works in creative activities. For instance, they can create some simple patterns, and then a human designer can choose this or that pattern. And then I go back to the teamwork issue. I work with freelancers a lot on my daily basis, because I think that every manager, every organizer, every business owner knows that there are creative people who don't know how to use their own free time, and we know how to use human competences in the best way. And it's good when a team of freelancers moves from one project to another. And I know that now there are lots of platform for specializing teams of work, collaborative teams of specialists, and they go from one project to another as a team, accumulating competences and accumulating their experience. And I think that it would be a good idea to assess the potential, the creative potential of each country. We know that in Russia there are a lot of good mathematicians. We know that Russia has lots of creative teams, and maybe it would be a good idea to set an e-platform for creative people and creative teams. And I know that there are countries which are not so good at creativity, but good at promoting creative ideas or commercializing them. Russia can play an important role in this, in the promotion, in the creation and promotion of creative ideas, using human capital, accumulated experience by creative teams. I like the motto of one conference that is organized annually in Minsk. They say, "Go global, stay local," and I like that the organizers choose this motto. There are so many different tools and ways of working with teams of creative people, of stimulating their motivation to stay in Russia and work in Russia, commercialize their ideas in the country where they come from. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Evgenia, for your contribution. The floor, I would like to give the floor to Nikolai, representing a high-tech company. You have a PowerPoint presentation, and I know that we are already behind the time schedule, but still, I think we should see your presentation, human capital as a macroeconomic resource.
Good afternoon. The first slide addresses some recent events in mass media. You might remember that Mark Zuckerberg published his wish to cooperate more closely with the federal authorities in terms of personal data. And, well, I find it interesting in some context. So the first one is digitalizing data, and avatar is the word which refers to the projection or the transfer of accessible data to the virtual space, to internet. Yeah, I think it's a little exaggerated, but I think that today, the digital avatar is formed by a system of collecting this data, and now you can recall that Microsoft, Google, and Facebook can be seen as the personal space. It can be seen as the personal private space. Facebook is the private space of a person, and Google is just the way to the future, or just the way, the road which a person takes to go further. So how does the digital avatar begin? How does it set up? How is it set up? So any actions that we do online, they leave the trace, and so they can be interpreted. So do you think that you can use this digital avatar to commercialize the personal information, the personal data? I heard it from many people, from German Graf, from some other people abroad who studied the same issue. We have got some experts in Russia. Once I talked to a person who participated in an experiment on well, implanting the chip in well, under the human skin, so just which you can use to scan some doors or to scan some sensors, and so then you can use your own hand to open a door or to pay at the checkout. So it's the step into the future. So, but then we have the issue of protecting the personal data so that it cannot be stolen. So, but how we can commercialize avatar? It's a human model that is kind of digitally recorded, and it can be addressed without, well, just without interfering with the person, well, just with people themselves. The simple way to do that is to upload all the data on some secondary systems, like to record something, record the skills, record the data, record the skills, which can be then borrowed by somebody else or studied by somebody else. So is it a protected thing? Is it a protected image? How safe is it? How much does it protect the personal information? Just can it be hacked by somebody from the outside? I think that the issue of protection, this data protection, is very topical, because just sometimes data is really valuable. It has the personal value. It has the value for the future. So, well, the avatar, the personal avatar, digital avatar issue is very important, because we leave traces, we leave digital traces online. We leave digital traces online, and we leave analog traces. So these two worlds are now being brought together, and when everything is digitalized, we will have only the digital avatar. Yeah, so because, well, just what is avatar? Avatar is the, well, imprint of our activity, and, well, just the traces of our activity. So you can, well, just we can get avatar if, well, traces, well, just traces are put together with the experience, sensations, competences. When it is combined with our life experience, with real emotions, then it can produce a digital avatar. So what can it result in? Well, we mentioned the artificial intelligence. So I don't believe it, actually. Can you develop on this idea? Because who owns this idea? When we understand how oil goes along the oil pipe, we understand whose ownership it is or who it belongs to. But so when we come about the cell companies, the telecommunication companies, or banks, and when we think about the data that, well, just they own, so then they claim that these are their data, but I would say that these are my data, because I'm the consumer, I'm the customer. So who protects the data, and who do these data belong to? So just the owner of the data is you. Yeah, so but you have to give the permission to some other companies, whether they are private or public, to operate your data. So, and that's up to you. It can be pension fund, it can be some private company, it can be some, well, just any company of any kind. So you sign the permission to use your data and to process your data. Then, so your data can be owned by you and the company together. So just I mentioned that we do the market study or just the market development of the territory. But together with some residential development, we deal with the IT projects, which deal with human capital. And they sometimes deal with some abstract things like the mood or some attitudes and so on. And we also think about creating digital avatar. Yeah. So, and very often our programs or our applications work with well, digital images of the people. So when they try to predict their intentions, their moods, their well, just their evaluations and so on. So very often they work with digital avatars. Yeah, so just when we bridge the well, moods, values, experiences, and the real life, the real services, we come to these digital personalities. Yeah, so just well, and the issue of protection of personal data is always very urgent, because there always will be people who are not happy with the level of protection and who will check everything, all the clicks and ticks, just so that they can make sure that their personal information is protected. Who brought this idea to life, and just how do you work with this idea? Well, I think it is important for everyone, and it is the task for a person how to operate their own personal capital, their own human capital, and just how to use this personal capital is, or how to use the personal data is, well, just a kind of decisive criteria, because as soon as we give the ownership on our personal data to somebody whom we don't like, then we wouldn't like just the very process of operating our information. So I will give you several examples. Some good international journals require the databases well, added to some publications so that they can check, they can verify the information on everything that is published in the article, so that they can be sure, they can make sure whether the information is true or not, and they can have their ownership on their this information. All the sociological or all the sociological studies, or the studies in, or the well, surveys, or the surveys and political studies also concern, or just also come to the same idea, that the, well, just the protection of personal information must be enhanced. So, but well, actually, there are some issues concerning the same problem. Sometimes we understand that people who are very much aware of these issues of personal data protection try to create some false images and false information. You can analyze the simple fact, or you can see the simple fact that online you can find more cat lovers than the cat lovers in the street. Yeah, just some people create the, well, the fake identity or the fake personality, so they can well, just they can choose some disguise and create some false identities online. And that's quite a common thing. The other thing, for example, when banks collect some personal information when they have to make some decision, it's again fake, because well, because you understand that, well, just it doesn't live very long. So another study that I conducted with my students, when you unexpectedly offer students to get $100. So, and then after that, you ask them how they spent it. or just first they have to describe how they are going to spend the money, and then after some time you ask them how they spend the money. You offer another $100 and you ask them how they spend the money, and you find out that they spend money absolutely different way from what they had described. So just in the same way, I can describe the experiment which was conducted in the United States when they initiated a program which was called tax rebate, when every taxpayer was offered $500, no matter how much the taxes or just how high the taxes that you pay are. So it means that everyone was got the right to get this $500, and people were actually very suspicious about this $500. Why? People with different level of taxes should have the same equal amount of money. Yeah. So and then people were asked how they spent this $500 or this rebate. Yeah. So just people, the smarter people, used this rebate money to compensate for their debts. People with probably less smart attitude to expenditures or just to the monetary issues, answer or just spend the money whatever way they liked. So just there could be some absolutely different strategies to human capital and to human avatars and to digital avatars. So I would say that the worst enemy to our avatars is the fact that we always change and we undergo the constant changes. So I also wanted to give the floor to the representative of Citronics company, Alexander Shipachov. You can come up to the stage and we can give you a microphone. You can, just please come up the stage and please take my seat because I would like to give the floor to you. So, and I will give you, just my seat.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. So it's probably more comfortable to speak when standing. So the topic that we're discussing is very familiar. Our company, Citronics, briefly speaking, our company is something in between residents, the state, business. So it's a live platform of interdepartmental, intercity cooperation. On the one hand, it's very good because we are at the forefront and we have all the latest news from business, from the states, from people. We know what difficulties Russian regions face when they want to involve their residents in public hearing. I really enjoyed the contribution on promoting territories and involving residents in territory promotion. It's a very positive example, very telling example, because people really feel that they are an integral part of a place, and they consider these territories to be their home. But there is the other side of the coin, as in all other things, the effect of a crowd. You know that in a sociological survey, if one person clicks or puts a tick, all others start putting the tick in the same place. So we travel we visit cities, different cities, and we participate in a number of strategic sessions in different Russian regions and different cities of Russia. And I myself have a feeling that before 2020, an active citizen has to be everywhere has participated in all social initiatives. But in reality, this is not so. In Moscow, people are quite active, socially active, and the further we are from Moscow, the less active people are. They can participate in some public events, but they are very resilient and they are inert. And I think that we should work more actively with people, trying to show them that they are part and parcel of the social system. And our task as a company is to build these horizontal links and vertical links. And what I was telling you about just shows that the principle of carrot, whip and carrot doesn't work in Russia. And we have to increase people's motivation. Maybe you have heard about the project Moscow 2020, and this is a wonderful project because all people's ideas were taken into account when elaborating the strategy, the development strategy of Moscow. For instance, when it holds about the transport system. Then the Samara region is another example, and there is a Ministry of Transport, and there the minister uploads proposals of his ministry on the perfection of the work of the transport system on the website, and people react. People ask questions and react in one way or another. It's a very good feedback. And the more examples similar to the ones that I gave you, the more examples we have, the better it is. And the Trend IQ City is also a very interesting project. It's a competition of cities, and I think that this competition will facilitate further development, technological development of cities, inevitably bringing to a new level human development and human competences in these cities. Another topic, brain drain. So everybody knows that there is such a phenomenon, brain drain or circulation of brain, we may put it so, and my personal opinion is that there should be some tools used by the states, by regions, and by cities in Russia to prevent young brains, young specialists from leaving the country, from leaving cities. And we should develop the system of freelance. It's a trend. It's a trend that has been there for quite some time, and we have to use it to our advantage. And this was my very quick contribution, bearing in mind our shortage of time. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I would like to give the floor to Svetlana Kuzmitskaya. Unfortunately, I did not see you on the stage. Svetlana Kuzmitskaya, head of the GS Group, preparing head of education projects of GS groups, and you can speak from where you are, and because the topic of your contribution is really very important to us. Very briefly, yes. Kuzmitskaya Svetlana, head of the education projects, whole GS Group holding, and our holding works in e-industry. So I would like to tell you about an innovative project that will be implemented here in the Kaliningrad region, in the east part of the region. But before I start telling you about the project, I would like to show you the territory where this project will be implemented. So in the east of the Kaliningrad region, in Gusev municipality, there is a private land and private investment cluster, the only private investment cluster in Russia, which was opened in 2008. The territory itself is 230 hectares of land, and the investment project is for more than 6 billion rubles, and it will create next year 30,000 jobs in the municipality. In this municipality and in the city of Gusev, you just point to the screen. There are several zones. Industrial zone with 5 high-tech production, then housing zone, R&D center, and venture foundation. And we are going to implement a new project, an education center, an education campus. So all production facilities located there, they produce equipment for electronic library, GS Nanotech. This is the center for the production of microelectronics, digital TV systems, and other household electronics. Prancor production facility specializing in the production of plastic and metal goods. Nanocarbon materials, cooperating with higher education institutions of the region. So a few words about our project. So the senior management team of GS Group decided to set up a creative campus for training engineering specialists for high-tech industries of the Kaliningrad region and the Russian Federation. And I would like to thank the government of the Kaliningrad region for giving a positive response to our ideas, and higher education institutions. The Immanuel Kant Baltic Federal University has become a partner in this project. So I will skip the slides. So I will focus more on the model that we proposed to the Ministry of Education of Kaliningrad. And all partners in the project agreed on it. So the scheme of campus as a model or education model of the campus is a system of continuous education and network cooperation. We think that the campus will be home to young researchers who would live and work there, and that's why we decided to transform the whole system of R&D into a system of continuous education. So there will be secondary education institutions, schools, and graduates of schools will go to universities, and in cooperation with companies, with industrial partners, will continue their education. The campus will allow us to work in close collaboration with employers, applied character, the system of cases, case studies, the creation of adapted programs, education programs for secondary school children, and specialized programs for higher education institutions. Now we're going through the process of approvement, and we are already now creating summer schools for talented kids, when the most gifted secondary school students can come to our campus, to GS Technopolis campus, where we organize a summer school on electronics. We take them to industrial enterprises, and our network partners, for instance, Immanuel Kant Baltic Federal University and Kaliningrad Technical University, professors from these institutes give classes to talented youth. We are now thinking of organizing a summer camp for talented kids who show good grades in mathematics. Then vocational education is also part of our model. Today, we have already gotten approval for our programs from the Ministry of Education for our vocational schools in this campus. We have managed to create a team of dedicated experts, professors who will teach at specialized vocational schools and colleges. And I would like to say a few words about our partner, Immanuel Kant Baltic Federal University. Professors from the university took an active part in the preparation of curricula, education programs, and Immanuel Kant Resource Center will become an integral part of our campus. There will be 3 laboratories, the laboratory of nanocarbon materials, the laboratory on electronics, and IT laboratory will be part of our campus. And we are also planning to sign an agreement with Petrozavodsk State University from Karelia. They have a nanotech department, and their specialists are going to come and teach and work, do research in the campus. And another partner, our partner in the project, is the High School of Economics from Moscow. High School of Economics specialists are responsible for urbanization module. And every year, students from Immanuel Kant University and High School of Economics come to our campus and spend approximately 2 to 3 weeks doing research there, writing their research works, listening to courses. There's only one condition for their participation. We, as experts, we set research tasks for students, and at the end of their short course, students have to present the results of their research in GS campus. Thank you, Svetlana. How many slides do you have? Because we are very pressed for time. So the system of continuous education that we are promoting ends with research organizations and R&D organizations. And I would like to ask participants of the IPQuorum to look at the topics that we are working on and maybe take part in some of our events. Thank you very much. When we speak about human capital, I'm finishing, and I know that there is another session, and some people are already late for their flights. But I would like to repeat one success story. In the Far East, there was an industrial enterprise, 200,000 to 300,000 employees, and some of the employees were taken from Moscow, and some years passed, and many people left because the enterprise did not create favorable conditions and did not let them stay. So this is the story opposite to the story of success. And we have to think about the development of human capital, because this is human capital is one of the drivers of economy, the drivers of our region and the country in general. And I would like to refer to the experience of Israel. Of course, we have to create all the necessary conditions that would help people realize their internal creative potential to the full. And Israel and the presentation that we heard today is a very good example. Of course, I know that Israel borrowed a lot from Russia, including the human capital, and we have to learn from each other. We learn from Israel, and we learn from each other. We will discuss the topic of human capital tomorrow and the day after tomorrow during the last day, and we apologize for keeping you too long, for exceeding our time limits, but I thought it important to exchange best practices, and we worked during 2 hours instead of 1 hour, but I would like to thank all participants for their contribution in our discussion.